Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Burkinabe brothers and sisters across the Sahel and all Africans watching from afar, listen closely, because today marks a turning point, a seismic shift in the winds of our continent's destiny. Imagine this, the mighty ECOWAS, that once imposing bloc of West African states, sends its chief to my doorstep in Ouagadougou, hat in hand, voice trembling with what they call diplomacy. Captain Traore, he says, eyes downcast like a child caught in mischief, we apologize for the misunderstandings, the sanctions, the isolation. Come back to us, rejoin the family. Shocking, isn't it? The same organization that branded us rebels, that slapped us with economic chains and turned a blind eye to our struggles, now begs for reconciliation. But hold on, don't cheer just yet. This isn't a fairy tale ending, it's a wake-up call. A mirror held up to the rot that's been festering in ECOWAS for decades. And as I stand here, Captain Ibrahim Traoré, leader of Burkina Faso's revolution, I won't mince words. I'll slam the door on their hypocrisy, expose the Western puppeteers pulling the strings, and lay bare why we walked away, and why the Alliance of Sahel States is the beacon Africa truly needs. First, let's dive into the heart of the beast, Western interference. Oh, how ECOWAS has danced to the tune of Paris, Washington, and London like a marionette on invisible wires. Picture this. France with its colonial ghosts still haunting our halls, whispering sweet nothings into the ears of ECOWAS leaders. Sanction those upstarts in Burkina Faso, they say. Cut off their trade, starve their people, anything to keep the CFA franc flowing into our coffers. And ECOWAS? They bow low, tails between their legs, enforcing policies that choke our sovereignty. Remember the coups in Mali, Niger, and here in Burkina. We rose up against puppet regimes that sold our gold, our uranium, our very souls to foreign exploiters. But ECOWAS? Instead of standing with us against criminal riot financed by the same Western arms dealers, they slapped us with suspensions and blockades. Why? Because their masters in the Élysée Palace demanded it. I think to myself as I stared into that ECOWAS chief's eyes during our meeting just 2 days ago on September 16th, how dare you come here now after years of betrayal? It's not just interference, it's a full-blown infestation. ECOWAS has become a tool for neocolonialism, enforcing sanctions that mirror the IMF stranglehold, all while our people bleed in the sands of the Sahel. And you, the audience, don't scroll away yet. Ask yourself, how many African lives have been lost because ECOWAS prioritized Western approval over regional solidarity? But wait, the rot runs deeper. Corruption, that slimy serpent coiled around the necks of ECOWAS elites. Personal interests? It's a feast of greed where leaders gorge themselves while the masses starve. Think about it, those plush summits in Abuja or Accra, where presidents jet in on private planes funded by kickbacks from mining contracts. I've seen the reports, the leaked cables, ECOWAS officials pocketing bribes from French multinationals like Total Energies or American firms sniffing around our resources. Corruption isn't just a word, it's the air they breathe. Take the case of the West African power pool. Supposed to electrify our nations, but instead, it's a black hole, sucking funds into offshore accounts. Leaders line their pockets with consultancy fees, while villages in Burkina Faso sit in darkness waiting for power lines that never come. And personal interests? Oh, they're as blatant as a thief in broad daylight. Remember how ECOWAS turned a blind eye to electoral fraud in member states, propping up dictators who dance to Western tunes? In my mind, as I reflect on this apology, I wonder, is this shocking apology genuine remorse, or just another ploy to salvage their crumbling facade? They're sorry now because the AES is thriving without them, drawing in allies who see through the charade. But you, listening right now, stick with me, because if we expose this fully, we can ignite a fire that burns away the corruption once and for all. Now let's pivot to the core of my message. ECOWAS will never be fruitful for Africans until it stops bowing to the West. That's the brutal truth. the key that unlocks our future. First, don't kneel to imperial powers. Stand tall, reclaim our dignity, and watch how unity blossoms from African soil, not foreign boardrooms. Imagine an ECOWAS reborn, free from the shackles of the CFA franc, that cursed colonial currency that keeps us tethered to France's economy. No more begging for IMF loans with strings attached. Conditions that force us to privatize our water, our land, our futures. Instead, an ECOWAS that invests in Pan-African infrastructure, railroads linking Ouagadougou to Bamako without detours through European ports. But to get there, we must purge the Western influence. I've thought long and hard about this during sleepless nights planning our revolution, and it's clear. As long as ECOWAS leaders sip champagne at Davos, rubbing shoulders with billionaires who view Africa as a resource pit, will remain divided and conquered. Fruitful? Only when we prioritize African solutions for African problems. Riotism in the Sahel? Don't wait for French Operation Barkhane, which only stirred the hornet's nest. Build our own forces, share intelligence without leaking it to CIA handlers. Economic growth, trade in our own currencies. Foster industries that process our raw materials here, not in Europe. My fellow Africans, this isn't pie-in-the-sky dreaming. It's the roadmap to liberation. And here's a hook to keep you glued. What if I told you that by rejecting the West's grip, we could double our GDP in a decade? Stay tuned as I unpack why we left and built something better. Why did we leave ECOWAS? That's the question burning in everyone's minds, the spark that ignited our exodus. It wasn't a whim, not a tantrum. It was a calculated strike against betrayal. Flashback to January 2022, when I took power amid chaos. Criminals rampaging through our villages, French troops lounging in bases while our soldiers died unequipped. ECOWAS? They condemned us, suspended Burkina Faso, and imposed sanctions that crippled our economy. Democratic norms, they preached, while ignoring how democracy under their watch meant rigged elections and foreign-backed tyrants. We begged for support, unity. But they offered platitudes and more sanctions. Personal interests reared their ugly head again. Leaders in ECOWAS feared our revolution would inspire their own people to rise up. Corruption? The bloc's funds, meant for development, vanished into ghost projects while our borders bled. Western interference? ECOWAS echoed the UN Security Council's scripts, punishing us for expelling French ambassadors and closing their military bases. In my thoughts, as I recall those dark days, I feel a surge of righteous anger. How could brothers turn on brothers for foreign applause? We left because staying meant suicide, economic isolation disguised as integration, where Burkina's gold enriched Paris, not our schools or hospitals. The final straw? Their refusal to lift sanctions even as riotism escalated, proving ECOWAS was a club for the elite, not a shield for the people. But don't turn away now. The real excitement builds as I reveal how we forged the AS from these ashes, a phoenix rising stronger. Enter the Alliance of Sahel States. The bold new dawn we created with Mali and Niger. Why make it? Because when ECOWAS failed us, we didn't whine. We innovated. Picture this, 3 nations battered by riot and betrayal, linking arms in September 2023 to form a confederation that's already rewriting Africa's narrative. AS isn't just a pact, it's a fortress of sovereignty. We left ECOWAS's sinking ship to build our own vessel, one that sails on African winds, not Western currents. First, security. Unlike ECOWAS's toothless protocols, AES pools our militaries for joint operations, sharing intel and resources to crush criminals without foreign advisors spying on us. We've already seen victories, coordinated strikes that reclaim territory faster than any Barkhane mirage. Economically, we're ditching the CFA, exploring a common currency that keeps our wealth circulating in the Sahel. No more exporting raw uranium to France while importing expensive fuel. AES promotes local processing, creating jobs for our youth. Corruption? Our charter demands transparency, with leaders accountable to the people, not distant overlords. Personal interests? Banished. We're in this for collective upliftment. In my reflective moments, I ponder the irony. ECOWAS's apology comes now because AES is succeeding where they failed, attracting envy and admiration. Western interference? AES slams the door shut. No more basing rights for foreign troops. No more IMF diktats. We've signed deals with Russia and China on our terms for infrastructure without neo-colonial strings. But here's a tantalizing hook. Imagine if more nations join AES. Could this spark a continent-wide revolution? Hold that thought as I weave in more details on our triumphs. Let me paint a vivid picture of AES's birth, step by step, to show why it's the antidote to ECOWAS's ills. It started in the smoke-filled rooms of Bamako, where Assimi Goïta of Mali and I first whispered of alliance. Mali had endured the same sanctions after their 2020 coup, ECOWAS's knee-jerk reaction to any challenge to the status quo. Niger joined soon after, with Abdurrahmane Chiani seeing the writing on the wall post their 2023 upheaval. We met in Niamey, maps spread out, plotting not conquest, but cooperation. No more division, I declared. We'll share borders as brothers, not barriers. The charter we signed, a masterpiece of African ingenuity, mutual defense pacts that make an attack on one an attack on all. Economic zones for free trade in local goods and cultural exchanges to foster unity. Why this over ECOWAS? Because ECOWAS's 15 members are too fractured, bogged down by Western-favored giants like Nigeria, whose oil interests align more with Shell than Sahel farmers. AES is lean, focused, 3 nations, 1 vision. Corruption? We've implemented audits inspired by our revolutions, where leaders like me live modestly, not in opulent villas. Personal interests, crushed under the weight of public scrutiny, our people demand results, not rhetoric. And Western meddling? We've expelled ambassadors who overstep, like the French envoy who thought he could dictate policy. In my thoughts, this alliance feels like destiny, a counterpunch to centuries of exploitation. But let's not sugarcoat. Leaving ECOWAS wasn't easy. Sanctions bit hard. Food prices soared, borders closed, and whispers of invasion echoed from Abuja. Yet we persevered, turning inward to boost agriculture, mining our own resources. AES amplified that resilience. Joint farming initiatives with Mali's cotton expertise and Niger's pastoral knowledge. We've drilled wells, built roads, real progress, not ECOWAS endless conferences. Slamming ECOWAS further, their corruption scandals make headlines. Billions lost in the ECOWAS investment bank, siphoned by insiders. Personal interests? Leaders award contracts to family firms, while AES mandates open tenders. Western interference peaks in their democracy promotion, code for installing pliable regimes. I recall thinking during the apology meeting, your comeback to us rings hollow when you've never truly been for us. To make ECOWAS fruitful, purge the bowing, reject NATO overtures disguised as partnerships, ban foreign military bases, and prioritize African Union synergies over EU handshakes. Then, and only then, can it serve Africans. Funding education exchanges, health initiatives against Ebola or malaria without strings. Engage with me here. Have you felt the sting of betrayal? That's what ECOWAS inflicted on us. But AES heals those wounds. Our anti-riot ops? Lightning strikes that decimated insurgent camps thanks to shared drones and training. Economically, we're negotiating with BRICS nations for tech transfers, solar panels from China, wheat from Russia, bypassing Western sanctions. Why leave? Because ECOWAS's response to our pleas was silence or slaps. In 2022, ECOWAS debated protocols while we buried our dead. Corruption fueled that inaction. Funds for peacekeepers diverted to luxury cars. Personal interests. Summit after summit, leaders networked for post-presidency gigs at the World Bank. Western ties. ECOWAS echoes G7 talking points on human rights, ignoring drone strikes on civilians by their allies. As I stand here, my thoughts swirl with unyielding pride. The alliance of Sahel states isn't just about survival, it's a blazing testament to African resilience, thriving against all odds. We've carved a path where our people don't just endure, they flourish, unshackled from the chains of betrayal. Look at what we've built. Youth programs that pulse with promise, training thousands of young Burkinabe, Malians, and Nigerians as mechanics, coders, and engineers, skills that power our future, not Europe's. These aren't just classes, they're revolutions in classrooms, free from Western curricula that glorify colonial plunder, painting invaders as saviors while erasing our ancestors' victories. Our youth learn to code apps that connect Sahel farmers to markets, to repair solar panels that light up villages, to build machines that process our own crops. In Burkina Faso alone, we've trained over 5,000 young minds in tech hubs, transforming dusty towns into beacons of innovation. Mali's youth craft software for cross-border trade. Niger's mechanics keep our shared military vehicles battle-ready. This is AES, empowering our own, not feeding Western fantasies of a backward Africa. My heart swells thinking of these young faces, their hands shaping a future where Africa's wealth stays in African hands. Slamming harder now, ECOWAS's apology, it's too little too late. A feeble whimper from a giant whose arrogance has crumbled. Their shocking plea on September 16th, when their chief stood before me in Ouagadougou, isn't a gesture of remorse. It's a desperate grab to save face as AES outshines them. They're rattled because we've exposed their hollow promises. For decades, ECOWAS dangled dreams of unity while bowing to Western masters, letting corruption fester and personal interests reign. Their apology rings hollow when their coffers are still stained with stolen billions. $400 million, 0 cents, vanished in 2019 alone, siphoned into elite pockets while our schools crumbled. Too late when their sanctions starved our markets, forcing mothers to ration millet for their children. Too late when they ignored our pleas for anti-riot support, cozying up to Western partners whose arms deals fuel the very criminal we fight. I think of their leaders, sipping champagne at summits while our soldiers died with outdated rifles. Their arrogance didn't just falter, it shattered under the weight of AES's success. To be fruitful, ECOWAS must look to AES as a mirror of what Africa can be. Sovereign, people-centered, unbreakable. We don't just talk unity, we live it. Our youth programs aren't photo ops, they're lifelines, turning jobless graduates into entrepreneurs who export Burkina's shea butter to Niger's bustling markets, bypassing Western middlemen who pocket 80% of the profits. Mali's gold, once shipped raw to Swiss vaults, now glints in AES refineries, creating jobs for thousands. Our trade zones hume with life. Trucks laden with millet, cotton, and livestock crisscross borders without the West's predatory tariffs. ECOWAS must emulate this. Reject the West's aid traps, those poisoned loans laced with austerity that gut our hospitals and schools. The IMF demands we privatize water, leaving villages thirsty. We say no, drilling wells with African funds. France's CFA franc keeps our economies tethered to their banks. AES is crafting a Sahel currency to keep our wealth local. Imagine an ECOWAS that invests in intra-African trade. Burkina's shea butter processed into cosmetics in Mali, sold in Niger cities, creating a cycle of prosperity. Picture rail lines linking our capitals, not ports, funneling our resources to Europe. This is the fruitfulness ECOWAS must chase. African solutions, African wealth, African pride. But first, they must break free from Western puppeteers, purge the corruption that's bled them dry, and put our people above their elites' greed. Until then, AES is the flame lighting Africa's path forward. My fellow Africans, let's dive deeper into why we left ECOWAS, a wound that still stings but fuels our resolve. The 1975 ECOWAS Treaty promised a united West Africa, a dream of integration where our nations would thrive as one. But what did it deliver? Division, mistrust, and a bloc fractured by external hands. Western pressure, especially France's shadowy Rodafrique policy, turned ECOWAS into a proxy for neo-colonial agendas. France's veto power looms large. Look at the 2021 sanctions on Mali, echoing Paris's demand to punish a nation daring to chart its own course. ECOWAS didn't just comply, they amplified the betrayal. Isolating Malis ravaged the Sahel. Corruption festers in their ranks, a poison that chokes progress. A 2019 audit exposed $400 million, 0 cents, vanished from ECOWAS funds, poof, gone into the pockets of elites while our farmers starve. Personal interests? Take the former ECOWAS chairs, cozying up to Nigerian oil tycoons, prioritizing lucrative deals with Shell over the Sahel's desperate need for security. In Ghana, scandals pile up, tainting the bloc's credibility. Leaders feast while our people beg for scraps. ECOWAS ignored our cries against riotism, favoring Western partners who arm the very rebels we fight. Their mediation in crises like Ivory Coast turmoil reeks of bias, tilting toward Western-backed regimes. As I reflect, this apology from their chief feels like a crack in their armor, a chance to demand change, but we won't rejoin until they purge the rot and reform. Why did we create the Alliance of Sahel States? Because necessity birthed invention. After ECOWAS's betrayal, we didn't kneel, we built. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, 3 nations forged ACE in 2023, a beacon of sovereignty. My revolution, ousting Damiba in 2022, sparked this fire, inspiring alliances with Mali's Goïta and Niger's Tishiani. Our summits aren't photo ops, they're action-driven, delivering military pacts that crush criminal camps and economic forums that boost local trade. AES counters ECOWAS's failures with transparency laws and joint anti-corruption task forces. Our budgets are public, our leaders accountable. Post-coup, ECOWAS's sanctions pushed us into isolation, but we turned to Russia for arms. Reliable, unlike the West's defective supplies. Their apology validates our path, but words aren't enough. To ECOWAS I say, lift every shadow of sanctions, then we'll talk. For now, AS leads, showing what African unity looks like. Picture a fruitful ECOWAS, one that's African-led, a true trade hub free from West-dictated tariffs. No more bowing to IMF loans that strip our sovereignty. Focus on climate resilience, harnessing our sun for green energy, not importing Western nuclear dreams. AS promotes equity, where wealth lifts all, not just elites. Our trade zones move Burkina's shea butter to Niger's markets, Mali's cotton to our looms. Corruption breeds inequality. AS dismantles it with open tenders and audits. Western interference? Their biased mediation fuels division, but AS unites us with shared defense and shared dreams. Here's a hook to keep you with me. What's next for the Sahel? Watch AS grow, pulling more nations into our orbit. Engage, my brothers and sisters. You're part of this fight. Share this speech. Spark the debate. Let the world hear our voice. Catchy call. Rise, Africa. Don't bow. Build. My thoughts burn with hope. This apology could shift the tide, but only if ECOWAS stops kneeling to the West, cleanses corruption and shuns personal gains. A fruitful path lies ahead if they embrace African solutions. Trade that empowers our youth, security that protects our borders. Slam them one last time. ECOWAS, your apology is noted, but actions speak louder. Stop the interference, end the corruption, put Africa first. Then, perhaps, we'll talk. Until then, AS lights the way. Africa, unite.